Hey guys, and welcome back. My name is Miss Danielson, and today we're looking at conversions between metric units of measure. Now, I would hope that from primary you would have some of the basic knowledge about units of measure. For example, you should know that there are 100 centimeters in a meter, or that 1,000 grams makes a kilogram, or that 1 liter is 1,000 milliliters. But even if you have memorized these facts, you may still be having trouble with the conversions. But don't worry about that. I've got some magic for you today. I can't wait to share it with you, so let's get to it. First of all, you should know that metric units of measure for distance, mass, and capacity are all based on base 10 multiplication and division. Now, we've already covered how we multiply and divide by base 10 numbers. That's simply multiplying and dividing by tens, hundreds, thousands, and so on. If you need some lessons on that, I'll link them down in the description box for you below as well. The metric units of distance are all based on base 10 multiples and fractions of meters. For example, 1 meter is 1 times a meter. Then we've got 10 meters. We could call that decameters, but we don't really tend to use that name. So I've just put a star here. You don't need to remember it. Then we've got 10 times 10, that's 100 meters, and you could call that a hectometer. However, again, we don't tend to use that measurement, so you don't need to remember that name. Again, I just put a star here. But 10 times 10 times 10, or 100 times 10, is 1,000 meters. And 1,000 meters is what we call a kilometer. So you can see that to get from meters to kilometers, we take 3 jumps of 10. 1 times 10 is 10, times 10 is 100, times 10 is 1,000. So the spacing here is important. To the other side of the meters, we've got 1/10 of a meter. That's a meter divided by 10. We could call that a decimeter, but again, we don't usually use that name for this unit of measure, so I just put a star here and you don't need to worry about it. You do have to leave a space, however, because this is 1 meter divided by 10. If I divide that by 10 again, I would get 1/100th of a meter, or 1 centimeter. Next to the centimeters, we take another jump of 10, dividing by 10. That gives us 1,000th of a meter, which we call a millimeter. Notice that those are jumps of 10 and the spacing is important. When we divide by 10, we get 1/10. Divide by 10 again, we get 1/100th. Divide by 10 again, we get 1,000th. Again, we'll come back to how this table is going to be useful for our magic trick in a couple of minutes. Let's just see the other metric units of measure. Metric units of measure for mass are also based on base 10 multiples and fractions of grams this time. And I could draw you a very similar table for that. Notice that I've lined up my grams underneath my meters because the jumps that I take from grams up to kilograms or tons or down to milligrams are the same base 10 jumps as I did for meters. If I take 1 step to the left, that's times by 10, 10 grams, again, we could call that a decagram, but we don't really use that unit of measure, so you don't need to remember it. Just put a star to hold the place. Times that by 10 again, that's 100 grams. Again, we could call that a hectogram, but again, we don't really use that name or unit of measure. So you don't need to remember, just remember to put a star there. After 100, we times by 10 again, and we get 1,000 grams, which you should know is a kilogram. We need to write that name in there. If I multiply that by 10 again, I get 10,000 grams. And again, we don't really have a name for that. But let's keep going, just holding the spaces with stars for units of measures that we don't use. 10,000 times 10 would be 100,000 grams. Again, there's no name for that. Times that by 10 is 1 million grams, and that's a ton. You might also step back and say, from kilograms, I've taken 1, 2, 3 steps to get to tons. That's kilograms times by 10 is 10, times by 10 is 100, times by 10 again is 1,000, which is why a ton is 1,000 kilograms. These are the facts that you should know. But again, we're going to use this table to do our magical conversions in a minute. Let's just take a second now to go in the opposite direction. If I take a step to the right of the grams, I divide by 10. So that's 1/10 of a gram. Again, I could call that a decigram, but I don't really use that name. So I just put a star here. Another step to the right, I'll divide by 10 again. That was 1/10. Now 1/100th of a gram. You could call this a centigram. And notice it's lined up with the centimeters above. 1/100th of some unit of measure could be called a centi of that measure, centigram. But we don't usually use centigrams. So let's take a next step to the right, divide that by 10 again. From 1/100th, we go to 1,000th of a gram, and that's a milligram. Notice milligram is lined up with millimeter. Milla means 1,000th of that unit of measure. So a millimeter is 1,000th of a meter. A milligram is 1,000th of a gram. It's interesting how this all works out so that you don't have to memorize all of these tables. You just need to understand how they work. Next, for units of capacity, they're also based on base 10 multiples and fractions of liters this time. So here's our table, and it's a smaller table this time because we don't have anything like kiloliters. So let's just go to the right of the liters. One step to the right, I'll divide by 10. That's a deciliter. Remember I said we could talk about decimeters or decigrams, but we don't really use them? Well, sometimes we use deciliters when we're baking. That could be the amount of liquid that recipe might take. We also use centiliters, that's 1/100th of a liter, when we might be baking or cooking. Notice that centiliter is lined up with centimeter. 1/100th of a meter is a centimeter. 1/100th of a liter is a centiliter. One more step to the right is 1,000th of a liter. And that should be no surprise that that's a milliliter. 1,000th of a liter is a milliliter. 1,000th of a gram is a milligram. And 1,000th of a meter is a millimeter. So if you can see that all of these tables are essentially the same based on jumps of 10, whether we're multiplying by 10 as we go to the left or dividing by 10 as we go to the right. Our magic trick for converting between different units of distance, mass, or capacity will work in the same way. So let's figure out how we do that. Let me just show you how this is going to work for my distances. Remember that we're always just going to be multiplying or dividing by base 10 numbers. That's just shifting our place values along, or putting on zeros, or taking off zeros, or moving our decimal place. So if I want to convert 480 centimeters into the following units of measure, I'm going to use my table here, and I'm going to put 480 centimeters on that table. Notice that I've got my decimal here at centimeters because the centimeters is the units position. If I want to convert 480 centimeters into millimeters, I'm just going to shift the place values so that the unit position is over here in the millimeters. If I want this to be my units position, my decimal point should be directly after it. So, without having to do any real calculations, you should see that I've just shifted all of these place values up one place to make this the units position. This is now the tens position, this is now the hundreds position, and this is now the thousands position. So just like magic, I can convert 480 centimeters into 4,800 millimeters. Now you may be used to doing this simply by knowing that your centimeters to millimeter conversion is to multiply by 10. And if you continue doing it that way, that's just fine. But let's continue to see how this magic trick can work to convert between centimeters and meters. Again, 480 centimeters to meters. Right now, the centimeters is my unit position. If I want to make my unit position in the meters place, I'll need to put the decimal point directly after the value in the units position, so directly after the 4. Just like magic, I've now turned 480 centimeters into 4.80, or simply 4.8, meters. Again, you can do this conversion directly using your knowledge about metric units of measure. You should know that there are 100 centimeters in a meter, so the centimeter to meter conversion is simply dividing by 100. To convert from centimeters to kilometers, 480 centimeters has got the 0 in the units position, while I want my units position to be all the way up here where the kilometers are. So I need to put my decimal directly after the digit in this position. But there is no digit in this position, you might say. Well, I'm just going to have to fill that in with zeros then. 0.00480. I'm not going to get rid of any of these digits. I'm just going to place my decimal up here with the kilometers. And I'm filling that in with zeros so that I can make sense of this number. So just like magic again, I've turned 480 centimeters into 0.0048 kilometers. Notice I didn't put that last zero. I don't need that last zero because it's trailing after the decimal point. So it's the same value. Again, you can do this metric conversion directly if you know that there are 100,000 centimeters in a kilometer. There are 100 centimeters in a meter and 1,000 meters in a kilometer. So altogether, that's 100,000. Let's go on to some slightly more difficult questions now. You might be wondering, does this trick also work with decimal numbers? It does. Let's try converting 0.024 kilometers into these units of measure. So 0.024 kilometers. I've made sure that the decimal follows after the digit that I've put under the kilometers. And if I want to convert this into meters, I want to move that decimal to after the digit that's in the meters position. So over here, that has turned my value into 0024. Now I don't need these zeros that lead in front of my number. That simply means I've got 0,024. So that's 24 meters. Magic. Again, you should know how to do this conversion as well using your knowledge of metric units of measure. You should know that there are 1,000 meters in a kilometer. So to convert from kilometers to meters, we times by 1,000. I've moved that decimal point 1, 2, 3 places because there are 1, 2, 3 zeros in 1,000. To go from kilometers to centimeters, I've got my decimal in the kilometers position. I want to put it in the centimeter position. Again, I need to fill in some zeros here. So that number becomes 002400, and this is my units position. So basically, I've got no hundreds of thousands, no tens of thousands, 2,400. So I could simply say that that is 2,400 centimeters. Magic, right? That works because, again, we know that 1 kilometer is 100,000 centimeters. To convert from kilometers to centimeters, we times by 100,000. Again, if it helps you, think that centimeters to meter, that's a jump of 100, and meters to kilometers is a jump of 1,000. Next, from kilometers to millimeters. 0.024 kilometers. I want to convert that to millimeters, so I want my units position to be all the way down here. Let's put the decimal after the digit I want to be in the units position. Again, I've had to fill in some zeros here, and I'm left with the number 002400. I don't need these leading zeros here because that's just telling me that I've got no millions, no hundreds of thousands, just 24,000. So 0.024 kilometers is 24,000 millimeters. Again, that magic does make sense. It comes from the logic that there are 1 million millimeters in 1 kilometer. Remember that there are 1,000 meters in a kilometer, and there are 1,000 millimeters to make up 1 meter. So 1,000 times another 1,000 is 1 million. Now I hope you're getting the idea of this magic trick here because it makes things so easy so long as you know how to set up your tables. Are you ready for some practice now? I hope so. Here you've got a mixture of different metric units of measure, including distances, masses, and capacities. If you need the help of those magical tables, here they are for you. You should really copy them down for yourself and try to memorize them if you can. Now go ahead and hit pause, give it a go, and hit play when you're ready to take it up. I hope you had a chance to hit pause, because here come your answers. For question 1, we divided by 1,000. For question 2, we divided by 100. For question 3, we multiplied by 1,000. For question 4, we divided by 10. For question 5, we multiplied by 1,000. For question 6, we divided by 1,000. For question 7, we divided by 1,000. For question 8, we divided by 100. For question 9, we multiplied by 100. And for question 10, we divided by 1,000. Now, how did you do? How'd you like my magic trick? Are you feeling it? Do you understand it? Leave a comment down in the comment section. I'd love to know what you thought about it. I really hope this lesson got you thinking about place value and metric units of measure in a different kind of way. Until next time, keep practicing, and I hope to see you soon. Bye.